What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of OpenMic. It's Logan, and I am here with JC. Today, we're going to be talking about what is modesty and why does it matter. Now, JC, you've told me a funny story in regards to this topic. Why don't you go ahead and share that with our listeners?
Yeah, so it's kind of embarrassing, but my senior year of high school, I was going to a concert, and I was about to wear this outfit, and my mom was like, "You're not leaving the house."
What concert was it?
Oh, that's even worse. It was a G-Eazy concert.
I don't even know
Actually,
who
that tells you a little bit about where I was at in that time of my life. But my mom made me wear a tank top under the shirt, and I was like, you know what? Fine, I'll do it to leave the house. I get to the concert, and I go to the porta potty and take off the tank top and throw that thing in the toilet.
A porta potty? Was it just in an open field or?
It was an outdoor amphitheater.
Outdoor amphitheater. All right.
Yeah.
Down in the boot heel. Awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
So,
JC, modesty, as much as we're joking about, is something that we feel is important and something that there's a lot of opinions out there and a lot of different ideas of what that looks like. And so we wanted to talk about it and address it. So why don't you start us off with some thoughts?
Yeah. I think modesty is super important. It's not always something I've valued as a Christian. I came to know Christ when I was 7 years old, but I went through a rebellious phase when I was a senior in high school, a freshman in college. And during that time period, I cared more about what guys thought of me than what God thought of me. So that's kind of my story with modesty. I haven't always valued it, but since that point, God has really sanctified me and changed my heart on the topic. And I think it's a super huge deal in our culture today. I know a lot of people want to dress trendy and want to follow what celebs are doing or what the world is telling them to do. And a lot of times that's not very modest stuff that we see on media. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. And I think it's super important to know what Scripture says. So that's why we're doing the podcast.
Yeah, and we want to be clear that we believe modesty is both for men and women, right?
Yeah.
Boys and girls, that it is something that deals for both of us. I think sometimes that conversation happens, and it's like, this is something that just is something for women to consider. But we believe it is for both men and women to consider. And you said something that really stuck out to me. You cared more about what a guy thought than what God thought. Like, explain that to me a little bit.
Yeah, I think during that time, I really had bad heart motives. I was chasing after the approval of man rather than the approval of God. That's a verse in Galatians 6, and it just talks about how we should seek God rather than man. And at that time, I just turned away from that completely. I cared about getting likes on Instagram. I cared about getting likes on Facebook. I cared about getting attention in public from guys and attention from guys online. And I wasn't even really thinking about God at all. I don't remember exactly what was going through my head about where I was at spiritually, but I knew that I cared more about what others thought of me than what God thought about me.
Were you getting more attention online from doing that?
Yeah, definitely. I think my Instagram likes have shot down.
You're trending downwards.
Yeah, since I have dressed more modest, I don't get as many likes. But you know what? It goes back to the heart motives. If I'm posting something to get a lot of likes, then it doesn't matter if I'm dressing in modest or just posting a random picture to get a lot of likes. That's still a wrong heart motive.
Yeah.
And so that I feel like Instagram and media in general is a platform. We could get into a whole nother topic here, but it's a platform we should use to glorify God. And so if I'm not doing that with the way I dress by posting things on social media, then it's kind of useless to use as a platform.
So you were posting those things and we've talked about this before we started. Like, it is undeniable especially if you are a girl, that if you're posting things that are immodest, you're going to get more attention. Like, it is that we see that play out to be true all the time. But did that attention, did that fill you up? Did it leave you feeling satisfied? Did you have, really more importantly, was your self-worth higher?
Yeah, that's a good question. My self-worth wasn't higher. I think I was just constantly seeking out, what can I post next? Okay, this picture got a lot of likes, so how can I beat that number next time? And so it's this constant battle. It's like a cycle that you go through of what's next? How many more can I reach? What's my next highest number? And you never reach a point where you're like, oh, I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
So now when I post a picture, I have to be really conscious of obviously what I wear and post, but also of am I trying to just get a certain number of likes, or am I trying to just use this platform for good?
So what really changed in your heart? You obviously made a change where you were pursuing God in a different way, But like, what really changed in your heart that then like brought this to the light? Because you're saying, hey, this is something I've struggled with, and we're not out there like throwing stones at people, right?
Yeah.
But like, what changed in your heart that made you want to change the way that you dress or the way that you appeared to other people?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was the community I was around that played a lot into it. I started to gain a lot of friendships who were also pursuing purity and modesty. And I was like, oh, you know what? I should kind of live how they live and dress how they dress. And it became more of a practice before I understood the why behind it, if that makes sense. I was in a campus ministry, and for a summer I went to a project where we had to dress modestly. We had like a dress code. And I was like, oh, this is so stupid. Like, I don't want to do this at first. And then when I got back to campus, I kind of reevaluated, and I was like, am I still going to follow those guidelines, or am I going to live how I lived before I went? But I think God really did a work on my heart over that summer, and it made me realize that the way I dress should be something I value because I am held to a higher standard as a believer. Romans 12:2 talks about, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. And so I love that verse because I know that I should not look like the world. I shouldn't dress like the world. I shouldn't talk like the world. But it wasn't like I snapped my fingers one day and I dressed modestly.
Yeah.
God has really sanctified me since that point I talked about of rebellious season. But he's done that work through me in my heart for the past several years now. And I know that 10 years from now, I'll probably even wear things differently than what I wear today.
Yeah. So what would you tell, like, obviously, like, that was the path that you went down in dressing in a different way. But, like, why? Why were other girls around you, girls who you probably respected, I'm assuming, that you liked and that you looked up to? Why were, like, biblically, why are we to dress differently? You mentioned kind of not being conformed to the ways of this world, but really, like, biblically speaking, why does it matter what we dress? Like, what are the ramifications for a guy or a girl if they don't dress modestly?
Yeah. The Bible talks about not causing a brother or sister to stumble, and I think it's in 1 Corinthians. So when I learned about that, I kind of took that into perspective and was like, what does that actually mean for me? If I'm doing something or posting something that's going to cause another girl to stumble because she sees what I'm wearing and is like, oh, I can wear that because I'm a Christian and she's a Christian, so let me model after her and wear that. Then I shouldn't be doing that because it's causing her to think that she doesn't have to live above reproach. Same thing with a guy, though. If I post something and it causes him to stumble because he looks at it and is lustful after me or whatever, you can speak into that, Logan, then that is also not leading him towards Christ. It's leading him away from Christ.
Well, I mean, I think the initial response is like, well, that's a guy's problem, right? That I think what you said is countercultural. Like, you're concerned about not causing your Christian brother to stumble. Like, that's countercultural because I think culture would tell us, like, that's just the job of a guy that's his fault, and I'm going to do whatever I want. So what would you say to that?
Definitely. I know that's what a lot of people think about it. And that was my mindset when I first heard that too. I was like, well, a guy should have accountability partners with other guys, and he should be getting help for that on his own. It's not my responsibility. And to an extent, yes, he should have those things in his life, but I want to help other people strive towards Christ. It doesn't matter if it's a guy or a girl, and it doesn't matter the topic or the issue. As a believer, I'm called to push other believers towards Christ and be an example for those who are younger than me in their faith or who are not even believer yet.
Yeah, and I think as a believer, it's the mindset is what I'm doing pushing people closer to God, or is it pushing them further or like pulling them further away from him? And so that's definitely a countercultural statement. And I know that probably some of our listeners are like, why'd they have a guy and a girl do this? And you guys said like it matters for guys too.
Yeah.
Why is he talking about this? Like, why is Logan on here? But it does matter for guys as well. That you're being modest. What you post matters. What you put out there matters. Like you have the same responsibility and equal responsibility in protecting the heart of your Christian sisters and the people that are around you as well when it comes to modesty. And for me, honestly, we've talked about this, and my motivation for wanting to speak on something like this is twofold. So before I was on staff here at High Street as a pastor, I was an educator for 7 years, elementary PE, and one of the saddest, most heartbreaking things about my job was seeing consistently that there were girls in 4th or 5th grade that started realizing that them acting a certain way, it usually kind of started with acting, but sometimes in a sad situation, trying to dress a certain way, and, you know, their teachers making them, you know, change, you know, like that's a conversation that happens in schools. And seeing that happen, though, and them realizing early on that they got attention from it. And I so badly just wanted those young girls to know, like, listen, this isn't the attention you really seek. That what you're really trying to do is you're trying to fill a void in your heart that only God could fill. Yeah. And my second motivation, like seeing that, like I want girls to understand that you're more than how a guy views you sexually. Yeah. And that really leads into having my daughter, who's 2 years old. I want my daughter to be a leader whenever she's older. I want her to be respected, and I want her to, you know, do awesome things. I don't want her to be viewed because of her sexuality. I don't want her to just gain attention and a following because of the way she looks. I want the content of her heart, right? Her heart to be why she is respected and why she is leading well. Like, that's my desire for her. And I just feel like that from the perspective of a guy sometimes, that girls need to know, like, you're worth more than those likes on Instagram.
Yeah.
It's so fleeting, but like, girls, like, listen, you are worth more than the likes on Instagram. You're more than the attention you're going to get out in public from dressing a certain way. You're more than the way you look. And I know I'm rambling a little bit, but it really comes down to society. We've elevated sexuality so high. Yeah. And what really is most important is that we are children of God, right? We have a soul. We are created by God for a purpose, that He created us. Like, that is what we wrap our image in, not in our sexuality first and foremost. And I think that's why humility, why, you know, modesty and being humble in our dress, it really matters. What would you add to that?
Yeah, I was just thinking about Proverbs 31 and how in verses 25 and 26, it talks about how a woman is dressed by the things she says and her wisdom and the things she does. And those are all things that come from the heart rather than how she looks on the outside. And a lot of times you'll hear, oh, Proverbs 31 woman, that's like very well known in culture in general, not just Christian culture. And a lot of times people are like, yes, I want to strive towards that. I want to be like that. But do you actually realize that's talking about heart issues rather than how she looks on the outside? You know, the Bible says beauty is fleeting, and I know it will be fleeting. And
we're all getting old.
We are. And while we're young, it doesn't mean we need to be posting things or flaunting our bodies just because we look good at a certain age. We should strive more to have characteristics that are like Jesus in our heart that can pour outward to other people by serving them and loving them, discipleship, sharing the gospel with people, and just ministering to people in general. So I think I care more about those qualities now on the inside rather than the outside.
Yeah, it's like, wouldn't you rather have more of the fruits of the Spirit? You'd rather have more love, joy, peace, patience, kind of like that's what's going to make you attractive. And then, like, from a very practical perspective, for me, being married to my wife, Emma, when I first noticed her, like, my wife has always dressed modestly. Like, when I met her, she dressed modestly. And like, I noticed, obviously, like, attraction is a good thing. It's a thing from God. But like, I was attracted to her not based on what she was wearing. I was attracted to her because I was attracted to her. And then what made me really want to pursue my wife was that she was pursuing God also. And I knew that together we could pursue Christ. And so it wasn't worth like a compromise in that. Yeah. And I think that's such a thing that is undervalued for women, is like that confidence you gain from that is going to be attractive to other people. And at the end of the day, it is a heart issue. So I think finishing, practically speaking, where can like you go and get like modest? How do you dress cool and be modest? How do you, like, what does that look like for a girl? I'm not a girl, so I can't answer that.
Yeah. There are trends that happen in our culture that aren't modest, and it would be so fun and so cool to dress like that. But I really think it's worth valuing more what God says in His Word about modesty than trying to fit in with culture. But places to shop, I'm sure if you have a modest friend, she would love to take you shopping with her. That kind of sounds like you're a preteen, you're going to the mall for the first time. But I'm serious. Like, I have friends that I admire because they dress trendy and they are modest. And so I ask them where they get their clothes, where they shop online, where they shop in malls, and kind of just follow in their footsteps in that way. But I also would tell girls to get accountability in this area. Have a roommate that's a girl, or have a friend that you can text a picture to if you're questioning wearing something, and just ask her, hey, am I allowed to wear this out, or do you think I should wear this out in a public setting? And I'd much rather my friend tell me I need to go change than for me to walk out of the house and cause someone to stumble who isn't going to be my future husband one day. Yeah. It's just not worth it to cause someone to stumble in that way and then cause myself and my relationship with God to stumble as well, you know? So I would say do those two things.
And I think just like wrapping it up, it's clear that your heart is that you want to honor God first. And it really comes down to, are we elevating anything above our relationship with God, or is that the highest? Because it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl in our culture today. It feels good to feel wanted. It feels good to be liked. There's always that draw to have a bigger audience, a bigger reach of influence. But like at the end of the day, what does that really mean? Mm-hmm. And without God, it's nothing. So JC, thanks for being on, and thanks for talking about this topic that it's a good one, but it can be tough to wade through sometimes. So thanks for sharing your heart for us.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see y'all next time.